ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
The older guard are just saying it always comes back down to tradition. You need what people want to see in rugby is a traditional fan base. Well, no, they don't, because it doesn't work in the Premiership.
Former England international and frontman of R360, Mike Tindall. A rebel league with mysterious financial backing set to make players rich, transform the game and reorder the sport. Does that sound familiar? No, we're not talking about Live Golf. It's the wannabe rugby equivalent. As it happens, Rugby Australia CEO Phil Waugh was scheduled for an interview, so we're going to ask him about that, as well as Mark Nawaqanitawase, Joe Schmidt's impact on the Wallabies, and much, much more. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily. Phil Waugh is the Chief Executive of Rugby Australia. He's had a big year. Cleared the game's debts, witnessed the Wallabies transform into a team of pride, watching the sport gather momentum for the Rugby World Cup. We're going to cover all of that, but I've got to start with the elephant in the room, R360. A tough one for RA, I assume, because the breakaway league not big on detail to this point. I've seen reports that those who choose to sign on would lose the ability to play for Australia for life. I know nothing can be set at stone at this point in time, but can I ask, do you think that that's an adequately big thing to deter players from looking at a huge money offer from a potential breakaway?
Well, I think what we've seen is that the most attractive element of rugby for all athletes is playing for their country and the international component. And I think underneath that, we've seen leagues around the world struggle financially. And so, you can see why there's an element of disruption. You can see, why there are these concepts that come in to disrupt that second tier. But, right now there's very little information that people have. And, I guess it's a concept that's been driven out of the Northern Hemisphere, but clearly, with the talent we have in our country, our athletes become a target for it.
You've been a player, you've represented the Wallabies countless times. You clearly put a lot of value in the gold jumper. I just wanted to know, if you were putting your player's hat on, how would you approach this scenario where you've got a breakaway league coming to you with a significant financial windfall, but you love playing for your country? Yeah,
look, I was never financially motivated. So, there's nothing better than putting on the gold jersey and the crest on your chest. I just think that, that is the ultimate for any athlete. And I think it's you talk to any Olympian, you talk to any other Wallaby, and they'll say actually running out on the great stadiums around the world representing your country, there's no greater honour. And I think that, we're seeing that right around the world. I think that all rugby players around the world see that putting on their national team jersey is the ultimate. And so the position around eligibility becomes a really interesting one. But as I said, we've got very little detail at the moment. And our focus, as you said at the outset, has been around actually just correcting the system and stabilising the game here in Australia and ensuring that our own backyard's in order. And then as more information comes to light, then we'll make decisions around how that fits into our system.
The world of sport, full of disruptors. Few actually endure. I mean, you need exceedingly deep pockets, a big broadcaster. I had one contact describe this venture to me as kind of like trading in crypto. Who knows what's real, what's not. I saw another describe it as Fire Festival of rugby.
If R360 is, in inverted commas, loading, how far into 100% are you?
I would say, well, that's actually quite a hard question to do. 80%.
Okay.
Because, 70-80%.
Whoa, it's gone down by 10% there.
Yeah. Well, it depends how you're going to split it all up. There's a lot in there.
When you look at the detail or lack thereof, and I'm sure you're across it as best you can be, do you see this as a model that can endure?
Oh, look, I think that, when there's significant money being put into a concept, then, ultimately financials is really important to some, and being able to sustain it is obviously important to the founders. But I think that, if you look at sport and you look at where sport's been done well, it's, tribalism is at the heart of it. And so, it's certainly been something that we've been focused on here in Australia is, how do we ensure that, we've got tribalism across our Super Rugby clubs. We see that the game is very tribal and vibrant in the community game around clubs. And so, tribalism is, you can't fake it. And so, the franchise model is a very different way of thinking. But that being said, we don't actually have a lot of detail or information, and we'll wait for that to come.
This lands at a moment where you have many of your best players committed through to the Rugby World Cup, and rugby's looking rejuvenated. Far from losing players, you've got them hoping to come back. I mean, this week, Mark Nawaqanitawase told ABC he loves the freedom of rugby.
I love the game of union. There's a lot of things, that I miss. obviously the game itself, I guess for the freedom, you come to league and I guess you're kind of stuck to one side or, it's very structured. So in that sense, I like that part where, I could roam around and, get up to doing different things on any side.
I mean, he's indicated to the Roosters he wants to play at the Rugby World Cup. He's an expensive proposition, though. Is RA resigned to him playing his club footy overseas, Phil?
Yeah, well, look, we're pretty open-minded. I think that, as I've often said, we're a very different value proposition to what the NRL is, and I think that Mark came out and spoke to that different value proposition in terms of the international component. Game of all shapes and sizes.
The cool thing about uni is you can travel the world, so that's the cool part of I guess that job. Well, that's a massive part, right? So traveling the world and just meeting different cultures and different people, which is an experience I wish all people could experience.
So yeah, it's pleasing to hear those comments for someone who's played at the top level for both codes. And, we've talked a lot around the financial sustainability of our game and being fiscally responsible. And so, we need to ensure that what we're paying players is the appropriate level, but, also making sure that our Wallabies is the best possible team we can put out on the park. And, I think we've seen that connection back to the Australian public with the way the players have played and the passion they've shown in the gold jersey, and that'll be the continued focus as we build up to the 27 World Cup.
I saw Gus Gould speaking about the fact the winger is essentially going to give rugby a year of publicity.
I don't want to talk about it because I'm doing these now is giving rugby publicity. I just don't, that's what they've bought. They've bought a good player, but they've bought 12 months of publicity now. Good investment. They got 12 months of publicity out of Suoliti before he went.
And I couldn't help but think of Rugby Australia head office. You must have loved seeing that vision of Mark talking about how much he loved the freedom of the game and probably understanding that what Phil Gould says is probably correct, right?
Yeah, well, I think that you can't, when you hear comments like that, he hasn't faked it. I mean, he's played both and he's just expressing how he feels about both games. I think that we've always said that we need to create an environment for our players to come back into and feel welcomed, and that's what we're doing. And so, we've got some great wingers and outside backs coming through the system, and we've seen those be unearthed in the last 18 months. And so, the more that we have in the game, the more competition for positions and selections, the better we're going to be as a national team. So, look, it was pleasing. I think that the comments are real and they're authentic, and they come from someone who's experienced both games.
You've spoken a little bit today about the way the player market is kind of changing as we sort of deal in a global ecosystem, I suppose. And it's been interesting to me to see the change of mentality around players bouncing in and out of the Rugby Australia setup. I mean, Will Skelton, the best example of that, but there are many more. Players signing overseas deals on big money, still getting picked or being sort of seen as part of the future. It's quite a shift from what we've seen in the past, in particular, I guess, the experience you lived as a player. Are you happy with how that's working?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we've only, Will Skelton's, the only one who's really come back from overseas. There was a time there with Marika Korobetti and Sami Karevi came back from Japan. So, our preference is still very much to have our best players playing in Super Rugby Pacific and in front of, all Australians every week in, week out for Super Rugby. So that's still certainly our preference. But to my point earlier around fiscal responsibility, we need to ensure that we're living within our means, and there will be times where we just simply can't afford players. And so I think that we're working through that balance. But it's certainly our preference to have players in country forming combinations, committed to Super Rugby Pacific, which ultimately then feeds into the national team.
This weekend, the Wallabies played in New Zealand at a packed Perth stadium. The Rugby Championship is actually still in play if things go their way. I think rugby fans are feeling good about the Aussies right now. From an on-field perspective, when you look at the scope of results in 2025, do you see it on-field as a pass, a fail, a credit? Where do you see it, Phil?
Well, I think, and again, winning's important, but as an Australian supporter in any sport, you just want to see those representing your country playing with absolute passion and pride in the Australian jersey. And I think we've seen that with the Wallabies over the last 12 to 18 months, which clearly resonates with the public. And, we've had, sold out stadiums right around the country since June this year, which has just been pleasing to see. And in terms of the results, there's games there that we should have and could have won, which we didn't win. And, I know that the guys are very disappointed around the outcome of Eden Park last week.
Jorgensen tries to take it, knocks it on. It goes in the hands of McKenzie, who kicks it into touch. And the Bledisloe Cup for a 23rd straight year stays in New Zealand. The All Blacks have won.
But to come to Perth and play in front of a sold-out 60,000 at Optus Stadium for the Rugby Championship, as you say, still alive. We'd need the Argentinians to beat the South Africans, but as we know and as we experienced, the Argentinians are very capable. So I think all in all, it's been one of the most intriguing Rugby Championships we've had in recent history, and the way that the Wallabies have gone about their business, the way they've carried themselves, the way they've behaved, the way that they've gone out there and put their body on the line for the gold jersey. I think that's what all Australians are after, and I think that the guys have consistently done that.
We know the Wallabies are ranked 7th in the world right now. We know you kind of need to be top 6 for a Rugby World Cup draw, which happens later in this year, in order to get a favourable outcome, which is definitely what you want when you're hosting the tournament in just a couple of years' time. And we'll need to start winning a few games if we want to execute that. We've obviously got the All Blacks into the Northern Hemisphere tour in Japan. Are you stressed, Phil? Are you worried about them getting into 6?
I probably look a little bit stressed. I look a lot older than what I am, but as I keep saying, it's so competitive. Top 10 to 12 teams in the world at the moment, and we need to be good enough. And if we're good enough, we will be in the top 6. And so this game against the All Blacks in Perth is really important. And then, as you said, we play Japan, England, Italy, Ireland, and France, and there's some really important games there. The way the World Rugby rankings work is that obviously winning away from home is more important, but you need to obviously win your games at home. And then the Rugby World Cup draw will be done on the World Rugby rankings after the November window. So it's important. Am I stressed? Look, I'd love to be in the top 6, but if we're not, we're still going to be good enough to go deep into the tournament in 27.
Joe Schmidt won't be part of that. He's clearly been central to much of the success we've seen. Les Kiss, a fantastic operator, to take over next year in June. Got to be tough, though, doesn't it, to see Joe, who's been so central to this, on the sort of back nine of his time at the Wallabies, on his way out?
Yeah, we're only meant to have him till the end of the British and Irish Lions. So we certainly had great experience with him to this point, and then getting him all the way through till after the Test matches in July next year in 2026. I think that we're very lucky. We're very fortunate to have a coach of his experience continuing for as long as he is. And I think that we talk a lot around the head coach. A lot is also around just the assistant coaches and the management team around the Wallaby environment. And so we've tried to keep as much consistency and continuity through to the Rugby World Cup in 2027 as we can. And so whilst we'll have a shift in head coach and the history that Les Kiss has with Joe Schmidt, they coached together for 6 years in Ireland. So hopefully it's a reasonably seamless transition. But, we've been very fortunate to have Joe embed the behaviours and the culture in that Wallaby environment over the last period of time.
Pumped to see what the Wallabies can do this weekend against the All Blacks. Phil, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Headlines. Bronco Tamika Upton and Rooster James Tedesco have won the women's and men's Dally M medals for the best player in their respective NRL comps. It was the second time both have claimed the honour. Tedesco's 22 votes clear of his nearest rival, Nathan Cleary, on a night where he was also named Fullback of the Year and Captain of the Year. Not bad for a bloke who's meant to be closer to the conclusion of his career than the beginning. He has opted not to play for Australia in the end-of-year Ashes tour of the UK. Who's going to replace him? The Rooster does not think fellow New South Welshman Dylan Edwards.
I think Walsh. I think he's earned it through his performances the last 2 months. He's been the best player in the comp, probably, and big moments on the weekend when they needed him, he showed up. So I definitely think he's the future. He's had a really great end to the year. So we'll see what happens. It was disappointing. It was an easy decision for me. I didn't really expect it at the start of the year. I didn't get picked last year. I didn't play Origin this year. It wasn't really on my radar.
Reece Walsh will be playing Sunday in the grand final. So will Upton, as she and Brisbane take on the Chooks for the NRLW title. Both of those games live, commercial free, on the ABC Listen app. A near perfect start for Australia at the Women's ODI World Cup. Ash Gardner became the first Indigenous player to score a century for Australia in any 50-over World Cup as the Aussies racked up 326 all out against New Zealand. Gardner made 115 from 83 balls. The Kiwis could only muster 237 all out in reply. The Blokes beat the Kiwis too, only in T20 and in New Zealand. Mitchell Marsh might not consider himself a test prospect these days, but the man known as the Bison can still paralyse bowling attacks. He thumped 85 from 43 balls as Australia made 4 for 185, mowing down the target of 181 with 3.5 overs to spare. Earlier, Tim Robinson did pretty well for the Kiwis. 106 not out from just 66 deliveries. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily, produced by Poppy Penny. Thanks to Channel 9, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Good, the Bad and the Rugby podcast for the extra audio used in this episode.
Discover more great ABC podcasts, live radio and exclusives on the ABC Listen app.